que está enmarcado en el ciclo de conferencias que organizamos gracias al apoyo y la colaboración de la Nueva España. Cedo la palabra a don Santiago Velo Dantelo, presidente de la Academia de la Diplomacia.
Muy bien, pues me han pedido que haga la presentación del excelentísimo señor embajador Malek Twal, embajador de la Liga de Estados Árabes. Tengo que decir que cuando conocí al embajador hace un año, realmente fue una muy buena noticia por el carácter proactivo que tiene el embajador. No rehúye ninguna asistencia a un evento, a una participación, a un coloquio. Y eso no siempre pasa en el mundo de las embajadas ni de sus máximos representantes. El embajador lleva ya más de un año con nosotros, es jordano y ha pasado su carrera diplomática representando a su país, con destinos en las embajadas de Jordania en Alemania, Francia, Italia, Austria, Brasil, Bélgica y Brasil. Posteriormente se incorporó a la Liga de Estados Árabes ya como embajador. Yo creo que es un lujo que haya accedido a participar con nosotros. Sé de primera mano, además, que las actividades universitarias que tienen lugar en recintos universitarios son muy queridas por él. Y especialmente, ¿no?, en los tiempos actuales y las circunstancias que todos conocemos, el poder contar con su visión de los actuales desafíos de la diplomacia, creo que es un privilegio, ¿no? Por lo tanto, darle las gracias al embajador por estar aquí con todos nosotros y que podamos disfrutar además de su prácticamente 40 años de experiencia en el mundo de la diplomacia. Adelante, embajador.
Muchas gracias, Santiago. Since we are talking about diplomacy, you would forgive me if I have to speak in English. No? I'm not here to lecture actually, but rather to share with you my experience as a diplomat. And since I was asked to talk about diplomacy and the global challenges, so I will try in the half an hour that I have, first to share with you my own understanding of diplomacy. Second, I will touch on what do we mean by global challenges. And then briefly, I will talk about the Arab League. What does it mean as a regional organization? And then, since we are in a forum that deals with Iberofonía, I will try to make the connection between the Arab language, the Spanish and Portuguese language, and to bring this connection between the three languages, because we are sharing a common history, how this linguistic relationship could be transformed into a kind of cooperation. So first, diplomacy. Diplomacy for me is the art and the practice of conducting negotiations and managing international relations between countries. And I hope my colleagues will agree with me that diplomacy is about, first, negotiations. So whenever diplomats meet, they negotiate. Why we negotiate? Because we are concerned about our national interests, hoping that we can reach a common ground where our respective interests are satisfied. Negotiations is the best way for managing international relations. Whenever countries or representatives of countries are negotiating, then they feel the obligation of reaching a certain understanding. They will avoid any party to think of the alternative. And unfortunately, the alternative is usually war. So if we do not manage to reach understanding through negotiations, then international relations are immediately impacted by a potential occurrence of war. Diplomacy, if it is about negotiations and about managing international relations, international, I mean any relation between two states or more. So any relation between two states, two countries or more, it becomes international. So what I mean by managing international relations, it involves dialogue. That's why whenever we meet to negotiate, we have to dialogue, and to facilitate the dialogue, we have to know each other. If I have to dialogue with the ambassador of Angola, the first thing I would do, I will read the whole history of Angola. I will focus on the culture of Angola. I would focus on the economy. I focus on its recent international relations, old international relations, yeah. So when I meet the ambassador, even if we meet for the first time, he will have the feeling that I know him since a long time. So negotiations that leads to dialogue, it implies also knowing each other. And not only knowing each other, accepting each other even if we are different, and accepting each other even if we have conflicting interests. So again, because states usually have conflicting interests, diplomats are there to accommodate both sides, reach compromise, again, to avoid the other scenario, which is imposing your will through force, through war. Diplomacy, again, could be bilateral or multilateral. When we talk about Jordan-Spanish relationship, this is bilateral. When we add one country or 100 countries, it becomes multilateral. Of course, both are very complex exercise. So I don't think that bilateral is much easier than multilateral. It's true, when we meet in New York in the United Nations General Assembly, we have to reach consensus among 193 countries. But whenever we meet on a bilateral level, it's equally challenging, because usually bilateral relations are much more important than multilateral. And then you are negotiating your immediate interest and the challenges that are posed on your country. For us diplomats, if diplomacy is about negotiations, it's about dialogue, it's about knowing the other who is different from us, about accepting the other who is in front of us. It is actually a daily exercise. And I would say my presence among you today is also a practice of our daily diplomatic activities. Yet, whatever diplomats do behind the closed doors, yeah, is very important. But it is equally important to bring the outcome of negotiations, of dialogue, to the public, to the respective public of the negotiating parties. Why? because communication is very important. Whenever you tell the public that you are negotiating, you are sending a simple message that you are in favor of peace. That's why you are negotiating. And war is not in the back of your mind, unless you have the bad intentions and you're using negotiations as an alibi to justify why you are resorting to war. So communication in diplomacy is very, very important. And I was touched by the banner you have at the entrance of this embassy that I like it very much, which is a quotation of Mahatma Gandhi that El Camino de la Paz is la paz. What does it say? I don't want to give you the wrong interpretation. No hay camino para la paz es el camino. And I think this is to summarize what is diplomacy is this actually. Why diplomats are there, why we think we are relevant, yeah? Because we are in the first line to defend peace. And any war in history is a failure of diplomacy. So for us, it's true whenever we negotiate, it's a difficult exercise. It is a big challenge, but in the meantime, each of us have in the back of his mind the failure of diplomacy, because the alternative is really very dramatic. That's why diplomats are always motivated, of course, of satisfying their national interest, but equally motivated to be successful, because being successful is avoiding the alternative, and the alternative is war. Now, historically speaking, whenever we speak about diplomacy, the way we understand it today, I think diplomacy, any human activity has to be run according to certain rules. That's why in a country we have a constitution, which is legal rules that organizes relationship between the central government and its subjects and between citizens themselves. Yeah, the same in international relations. We have to have legal rules, and those legal rules are called international law. So there is also a connection between international relations, which are based on dialogue and respecting mutual interests, etc., negotiations. But these international relations are run by international law. And since we are in Europe, I think the international order that is run by international law is originally European. And for jurists, for international jurists, they always refer to Hugo Grotius, who is a Dutch from the Netherlands. He was the first European thinker who has laid down the basic foundation of international law in the book that he published in 1625 on the law of war and peace. And if you notice the title of his book, which is The Origin of International Law, the law of war and peace. So we are always confronted with these options. Either we opt for war, and then we give the credit to soldiers and generals, or we opt for peace and we give the role, the challenge to the diplomats to ensure peace through negotiations and through reaching agreements, treaties among nations. And whenever, again, as I said earlier, whenever diplomats fail to reach a compromise, then we are faced with the alternative, which is a nightmare scenario, war. And the first exercise in modern history, even if it goes back to the Middle Ages, of multilateral diplomacy, multilateral negotiations based on the initial rules of international law that was laid down by Grotius, yeah, was the Westphalian peace. And I think Spain has played a very important role during those negotiations in 1648 because it was partie prenante. It was an important part of the first 8 years war, and later that was extended to other European nations, and it became the 30 years war. So would you imagine 30 years of continuous war that ravaged practically, that destroyed, yeah, most of European cities or state cities because diplomats failed prior to the beginning of war to reach compromises. At the time, the conflict was based, of course, in territorial delimitation, but it was based mainly on the conflict between Protestants and Catholics, yeah, the newly nascent Protestant religion, yeah, against Catholicism that used to be the common religion of all of Europe. So the Peace of Westphalia has set the first precedent in our modern history for multilateral diplomacy, for multilateral negotiations, where representative of countries, of states, of cities who were in war, who were in conflict, to negotiate first the end of the war, and then second, to agree on the delimitation of their borders, because when you agree on the delimitation of borders, of fronteras, yeah, then we agree on what are your interests, what are my interests. My interests are within my own fronteras, your interests are within your own fronteras. For the rest, wherever we agree, we cooperate together. So again, the 30-year war was the failure of diplomats to avoid the war, and whole of Europe, all European nations have paid the price of that long war. But again, thanks to diplomats, that peace was restored in Europe when they met in Münster and Osnabrück, and actually they did not meet for 1 week. Yeah, they were locked in their hotels for as long as it took them to reach an agreement and to sign peace, and that's why it is called the Westphalian Peace Treaty. Yeah, I think nowadays we have many lessons to learn of our ancestors to avoid what we are living nowadays, be it in Ukraine or in Palestine or elsewhere in the world. Yeah, and the precedent that was set by Westphalia became a tradition for states and for diplomats working for those states. And if we look on the modern European history, almost 200 years after the Westphalia Peace Treaty, Europe, that was again ravaged by Napoleon Wars, they met in Vienna in 1815, and the agreement that was among those 4 European countries. The 3 countries which were party to the Holy Alliance, Prussia, UK, and Austria, against France of Napoleon. They called that meeting in Vienna the Concert of Europe. Concert, yeah? It's about consultation, meeting to consult each other, yeah? That's why the Vienna peace agreement among France and the other 3 European powers, it was a kind of concerto, a kind of negotiating forum that until today sets the borders of Europe that we are living 200 years after the Vienna conference. So again, what happened in Vienna in 1815 is a replica, is a reproduction of the experience that Europe has acquired in Westphalia. Now, so to sum up, if you Google diplomacy, you will have hundreds of definitions, yeah? My own definition, I usually opt for simple definition. And when I was a student of political science and international law, I was a great fan of Hans Morgenthau, who was born German and then grew up as an American scholar. So for Morgenthau, diplomacy is the promotion of national interest by peaceful means. It's so simple. Diplomacy is promotion, national interest through peaceful means. So for 40 years, I was trying to promote Jordan's interest in peaceful means, yeah? And I think this is the concept of all of us diplomats. We are trying to promote the interest of our countries through peaceful means. Now, to go back to the title of my intervention, Diplomacy and the Global Challenges. Now, if we make a referendum in this room, what do we understand, what do we mean by global challenges? I think each of us will give a challenge, yeah? But for me, to sum up, global challenges are set down by Kofi Annan, who was the Secretary General of the United Nations. And in the year 2000, 24 years ago, he gathered in the General Assembly was the General Assembly of Heads of States and Governments to agree on the set of global challenges, which were put into a document that is called Millennium Development Goals. So the Millennium Development Goals are, in my view, the summary of the global challenges that humanity, all countries have agreed on them and to put them as priorities for collective cooperation. Of course, among those global challenges, we have climate change, we have fighting poverty, we have education, we have renewable energy, and you name it. To face those global challenges, the United Nations agreed that we will work all together to face those huge challenges. And we set a deadline for our collective cooperation to achieve the objectives of the Millennium Development Goals by 2020. Unfortunately, because achieving those goals implies financial contributions, and we diplomats, we failed how to divide the financial burden of global policies that would lead us to achieving the goals. There was a delay in meeting the deadlines or in achieving the development goals. We give ourselves an extension, a prolongation for 10 more years. So now we have until 2030, and I hope by then we will be able to achieve the Millennium Development Goals. Now, let me talk briefly about the Arab League, and then I will, with your permission, a few minutes for questions or inquiries from the public. The Arab League, in simple words, is a regional organization. It was the first international organization to be created during the Second World War. So it was created in 1945, 3 months before the United Nations. Okay, it was created by 6 Arab countries who were the only independent Arab countries at the time in 1945. It was Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Syria, Lebanon, what is the 6th? And Iraq. Yeah. So it was created by 6. Today it counts 22 Arab countries, which means that whenever there is an Arab country that has acceded to independence, it would have the right to join the Arab League. What is the Arab League? We have only one condition, and this brings me to the Iberofonía, yeah? We have one condition. Any country that takes Arabic as its official language is entitled to join the Arab League. So, and you see here the importance of language. The importance of language because it's the only condition to join the Arab League. Even some countries that are not predominantly speaking Arabic, like Djibouti or Somalia, but because in their constitution, they incorporated a clause that Arabic is their official language, they became members of the Arab League, and the Arab League provided them with financial assistance to teach Arabic for its population. Now, again, to link the Arab League with the Forum on Iberofonía, for many Spanish Arabists, you have 12% of Spanish vocabulary that comes originally from Arabic. So at least we have a 12% share of your Spanish language. That makes us entitled to join your organization. And what applies in Spanish, I would assume it also it apply also in Portuguese. And if I'm not a specialist of languages, but you know, when I came here, you say as-sukkar, it's as-sukkar in Arabic, yeah. Arroz, it's arroz, yeah. Al-muhayda, it's al-makhadda, yeah. So on daily basis, yeah, I hear Spanish vocabulary that is identical to the same words in Arabic. And I had the same when I was ambassador of Jordan in Brazil. So many words in Portuguese are also equally originally from Arabic. Now, if we have to share experiences, Arab League countries and Ibero-American countries, as I said a while ago, Arabic is the main and only denominator among the 22 Arab countries. Because if you look at the dialects that we speak on a daily basis, between Jordan and Morocco, there's a huge gap of we barely understand each other. But when we speak literal Arabic, yeah, we understand each other 100%. I would say the differences between Jordanian dialect and Moroccan dialect is equal to the differences between Spanish and Portuguese. Because as an observer, yeah, whenever I hear Portuguese, I understand as much as I understand when I hear you speaking Spanish here. So we have a common heritage that would allow us to work together for the benefits of our people and of our countries. A final word on the Arab League. As a regional organization that incorporates 22 Arab countries with a population of 450 million people, it has a very important role in multilateral diplomacy. That's why you will see the Arab League having a memorandum of understanding with the United Nations, with the European Union. It has with India, with China, with Japan, with Latin American countries, and we have every other year, we have an Arab Latin American summit. So international organizations are the fora where multilateral diplomacy is exercised. Yeah. In Spain, the Arab League has opened its first foreign mission, and it was Madrid, not in New York, not Washington, not Paris, not London, for a simple reason, is our common history. Yeah, the common history between Spain and Arab countries, and I think Spain has a very special role. It's the only European country that has direct physical borders with the Arab world. Yeah, it is for us the bridge, el puente between the Arab world and Europe. It's also between the Arab world and Iberia. Yeah, so Spain has an important role to play, be it in Ibero-American relationship or within Ibero-Arab relations. I will stop here, and I rather prefer to leave the few minutes left for me for questions or inquiries.
Muchas gracias. Vamos a abrir un turno de 2 o 3 preguntas. Si hay alguien interesado, es muy interesante el final del embajador, en el que ha hecho referencia precisamente a que España comparte fronteras con la Liga Árabe, ¿no? A través de nuestras ciudades de Ceuta y Melilla. La Unión Europea, por tanto, efectivamente, como comenta el embajador, a través de España tiene fronteras con la propia Liga de Estados Árabes, ¿no? Eso es un dato muy interesante. Hay 2 preguntas que han solicitado, luego unas preguntas rápidas, y el embajador las irá anotando y luego contestará a todos. Adelante, no sé si hay micrófono.
They can speak in Spanish.
Sí, puedes hablar en español y él contesta en inglés. Puede hablar, entiende español perfectamente, pero habla en inglés para ser más cómodo. Pues en español, que para eso estamos en...
A ver, te quería preguntar, entiendo que la actual situación de España, a ver, hay una buena relación, la mayoría de los españoles tienen una buena percepción de los musulmanes y del mundo árabe, pero es cierto que todavía existen estereotipos. Te quería preguntar por los estereotipos, si todavía hay barreras o estereotipos que romper.
The question is now closer than ever the creation of a Palestinian state?
I did not hear.
No hemos...
It's closer than ever the creation Palestinian state?
So, in the first question, I think Spain, today's Spain, the Spain that I get to know over the last 2 years, is living positively and peacefully with its history. And I'm talking here about the large majority of Spaniards, of Spanish people. Yeah? They know that Arab Muslims ruled an important part of Spain for 8 centuries. Yeah? And that presence, that Arab Muslim presence ended with the Reconquista. I think few academics having a problem with history and with certain definition, conquista, reconquista, and so on. But for us, we look on first the feelings and the convictions of the majority of the population. Yeah? From what I've been seeing from Spanish people, and I can tell you that I've been all over Spain from north to south, east to west, yeah? They have, I would say, a very objective, I don't want to say positive or negative, yeah? I say a very objective reading of their history and an objective assessment of the Arab Islamic presence in Spain. That does not mean it is 100% consensus within Spain. You will see in certain universities, certain scholars who have their interpretation of history. And I think they are politically motivated. They are much more politically motivated than scientifically motivated or academically motivated, yeah? And it makes them much more popular when they opt for a kind of clash of civilization, yeah? As much as we find in the Arab world, yeah, a minority of scholars who do not like to use the expression reconquista. They call it conquista, yeah, with all what it implies, yeah. But again, for diplomats who are at the service of decision makers, we always capitalize on the opinion of the majority. So regardless of these odd voices in Spain or in the Arab world, I can tell you Arab-Spanish relations have been always excellent, regardless who is ruling the Arab countries or who is ruling Spain. And I can tell you, Spain is, and this is not known for Spaniards, yeah? Spain is the only European country, is the only, where it has a very positive image in the Arab world. Arabs, they are in love with Spain, contrary to their feelings vis-à-vis France, contrary to their feelings vis-à-vis UK. For us, the symbol of devil on earth is the UK, yeah, for instance. For North African, it's France, yeah. Spain has a very positive image, and I think this is something that we have to capitalize on. Now, on the second question from the lady, yes, it's very unfortunate that the world has to wait almost 80 years to recognize the Palestinian state. And it is really unfortunate to see so many victims and so much destruction and so many repetitive wars in the Middle East to reach the point where the world is convinced that unless it recognizes the Palestinian state, there will be no peace in the Middle East. And if there is no peace in the Middle East, there is no peace in the world. You see the implication of the ongoing war in Gaza for the last 4 months on peace in the world, yeah? you still recall the first few days and weeks, yeah, the terrorist attacks that took place in France, in UK, few of them here in Spain. Luckily, they were under police control, or even in Italy. Yeah, we cannot be indifferent to war. War is, as I said, the failure of diplomacy, but war is a failure for all of us. Yeah. So I think now seeing the destruction and the number of human lives, yeah, that are lost without any good reason, yeah, I think the conscience of world powers, even those who have contributed to the creation of the State of Israel and to its protection since its creation in 1948, they reached a point of maturity where they have equally to recognize a Palestinian state. And on this issue, I have to say a word that Spain is taking the lead. You know, over the last 20 years, we were categorizing countries who are with pro-Palestinians, who are anti-Palestinians, and who are in the middle, yeah? Nowadays, Spain is leading the group of countries that are promoting the recognition of a Palestinian state, yeah? And I think this is not a political position for propaganda, yeah? It is a political position that is originated from the principles that Spain believes in. It is compatible with the values of the Spanish Constitution. It is basically reflecting the feelings of Spanish people and their commitment to peace values.
Vamos a ir cerrando ya la intervención del embajador, pero voy a dar paso antes al señor Álvaro Durantes, que quería hacer algunos comentarios y algunas anotaciones.
Muchas gracias, embajador. Gracias por su excelente disertación. Me gustaría hacer unos comentarios breves sobre esta interesante ponencia. Muy interesante ponencia porque nos interpela a los países de lengua española y portuguesa del mundo en varios aspectos, en varios momentos. El embajador se ha referido a la paz de Westfalia, 1648, y aquí tenemos un ilustre también profesor de la historia de las relaciones internacionales, el cónsul general de Uruguay. Ahí nace la diplomacia multilateral, pero nace también el mundo interestatal. El mundo de los estados que estamos viviendo hoy, con pérdidas de soberanía, la paradoja de pérdida de soberanía en los estados, pero ampliación del número de estados, ese mundo nace en 1648. Y justamente, ¿cuál era el mundo justo anterior? El mundo forjado desde España, desde la península ibérica, que era el mundo de visión universalista, que cae en 1648. Y España, en este caso, que en ese momento pierde Portugal, pasa a ser un estado de la comunidad internacional, cuando antes es conceptuado como la monarquía católica o el imperio católico. Católicos significa universal, con una vocación universal al, en ese momento, haber heredado los derechos de Castilla y de Portugal sobre su proyección en el mundo. Es un apunte historiográfico, pero tiene tanto que ver con el hoy mundo de la Iberofonía, que nace en aquel mundo universalista, se transmuta en mundo interestatal desde 1648 hasta ahora, y yo sugeriría que no sé, por supuesto el mundo interestatal va a durar mucho tiempo y aquí está la diplomacia para defenderlo, pero vamos hacia nuevas fórmulas de globalidad y de universalismo porque hay que ajustar todo este sistema. Tenemos estados del tamaño de Andorra o de Mónaco y estados del tamaño de la República Popular China. ¿Cómo se articula esto en una Asamblea General de Naciones Unidas? Incluso la Organización de Naciones Unidas, cuando el embajador se ha referido al concierto de 1815, el Congreso de Viena y los directorios que se van sucediendo, y pensamos en el actual sistema de Naciones Unidas creado en 1945, 3 meses después de la decana de las organizaciones internacionales, la Liga Árabe, es interesante ver que el sistema de Naciones Unidas representa un en origen un directorio de naciones que ha ganado una guerra. A partir de ahí, claro, no estamos en un sistema universalista, sino en un sistema de concierto de naciones vencedoras que se ha ido transformando para intentar adaptarnos. Quizás hay que pensar en una verdadera reforma o refundación de ese sistema global. Siempre hay una tendencia a decir que se crean en 1945. Bueno, yo creo que se crea la Sociedad de Naciones mucho antes, pero como fracasó de esa manera, no se la quiere ni considerar antecedente. Lo es. Es lo mismo transmutado, en mi opinión. Pero ¿cuánto nos tiene que enseñar la Liga Árabe como decana, como organización internacional decana creada por aquellos primeros 6 estados? Para nosotros, pensaba, 1945, la Organización de Estados Iberoamericanos para la Educación, la Ciencia y la Cultura tiene su germen en 1949, no mucho más allá. Estamos orgullosos de ello porque es de mediados del siglo XX. Pero se han seguido creando organizaciones de lengua española y portuguesa desde 1949 hasta 1996 con la Comunidad de Países de Lengua Portuguesa. ¿Y por qué la Comunidad de Países de Lengua Portuguesa no se articuló antes? Porque precisamente fueron naciones que estaban sometidas a un régimen colonial hasta 1975 y hubo que esperar 20 años a la resolución de los conflictos civiles de las naciones africanas que lamentablemente lo vivieron para que se pudiese comenzar a pensar primero en esta asociación interlusófona. Segundo, ya estamos comenzando todos a pensar en algo más grande con los países de lengua española y portuguesa. El embajador se ha referido al 12% de ese léxico compartido entre nuestras lenguas, que efectivamente es en portugués y en español. Tenemos esa riqueza añadida con la lengua árabe. Los filólogos, cuando hablan de portugués y español, hablan de una coincidencia del 89 al 90% de nuestro léxico, ¿no? Es cuando vemos. Me ha parecido muy interesante cuando usted habla del árabe común o darilla, hablado en Marruecos y en Jordania, como en línea con nuestras reflexiones de ayer mismo, cómo se parece este caso al español y el portugués. Es decir, el español y el portugués son más tanto una lengua como el árabe, conjuntamente, o quizás más. En el sentido de que, y nos remitimos a la historia, usted ha hablado de la conquista o la reconquista, según la interpretación. Hemos dormido en el Hotel Reconquista hoy y estamos en el origen de esa reconquista, proceso como se quiera denominar, de donde, por cierto, como decía al principio, surgen los reinos de Castilla y de León primero, de Castilla después y de Portugal en la secesión de León. Estamos en un origen que es la reconquista y que es conquista y que lo es del espacio multinacional de la Iberofonía en tanto que conjunto multinacional de estas lenguas. Hay que decirlo porque estamos en un lugar muy especial en este sentido, ¿no? 89%. Y quizás la diferenciación entre las variantes de la lengua árabe y su diversidad o su separación de intercomprensión en este momento en relación con el español y portugués pueda tener que ver con el inicio de la proyección histórica del mundo árabe, que es del siglo VIII, es decir, hace bastantes siglos, mientras que la proyección del mundo ibérico es del siglo XV. Del siglo XVI, del siglo VIII al siglo XV, esos 700 años marcan una diferencia en cuanto a esa verdadera homogeneidad lingüística que tenemos. Se ha referido el embajador al apoyo y a la simpatía de España a la causa de la creación de un Estado palestino y no puedo dejar de recordar que Su Majestad el Rey lo ha dicho también hace pocos días. El rey de España, que por cierto ya en tiempos de Yasser Arafat y en las primeras visitas del rey Juan Carlos, la corona de España como tal, el rey Juan Carlos a Jerusalén, fue amablemente reconocido en términos sociales y políticos, no institucionales, como rey de Jerusalén, tanto por Palestina como por Israel, por el título heredado de los cruzados cristianos que reside en la corona de España, que tiene también esta connotación, ¿no? Y la historia lo ha dicho claramente, las diferentes interpretaciones de los catedráticos o investigadores o científicos sociales del mundo árabe y del mundo y de España, ¿no?, respecto a todos estos procesos históricos. Pero como decíamos ayer, podemos encontrar tantas interpretaciones, tantos problemas en la historia, debemos centrarnos en el futuro, que para eso estamos y la diplomacia busca la paz hacia el futuro. Y ha hablado de que y el presidente de la Academia de Diplomacia también, de cómo España es el único país que tiene fronteras terrestres con la Liga Árabe. Sin embargo, España no tiene ni puede tener la lengua árabe como lengua oficial, por lo tanto no entraría en la Liga Árabe. Sin embargo, España sí podría estar en la Unión Africana. Porque España, como país que tiene territorio en
África.
en el continente africano, y también, seamos serios, geográficamente, en el mundo africano, en el archipiélago de las Islas Canarias, que es oficial y técnicamente territorio de la Unión Europea, pero geográficamente es África. Entonces, España, en esa universalidad que viene de antes de 1648, bien puede, de la misma manera que es parte del mundo iberoamericano, ser parte honrosamente del mundo africano también. Siempre que se habla de la relación del mundo árabe con España, nos remitimos a la noche de los tiempos, entre los años 711-718 a 1492. Pero España ha estado muy presente en el norte de África, en otro contexto, desde el siglo XIX hasta 1975 también. Y de ahí hemos hablado de Sáhara Occidental, del norte de Marruecos, etc. Por lo tanto, solamente darle la enhorabuena por todo lo que nos ha sugerido su excelente intervención.
Muchas gracias por los comentarios.